live here on a Friday night. I got a really great show for you. I am very excited about this one. We have Dave Gutter playing for us, fresh off of the Grammy Award. He's going to talk to us quite a bit about that. That's very exciting. It's a big get. Without further ado, we'll get to talking some more, but let's hear from Dave Gutter playing a couple of songs. Take it away, Dave. Midlife Crisis, I'm going to guess.
That's Midlife Crisis. That's where this all started. I got COVID, and then people started calling me, and they were like, dude, I just want you to know that I always thought you were a really good guy. And I was like, oh, these guys think I'm going to die. So I made an album about getting old and mortality and all that stuff. And I got to tune up real quick. Sure. But so basically, this next song I'm going to do is an anthem that I wrote this year when I felt really down about my music and my contribution to the world in general. What am I doing? Just writing songs for my health. So this song I wrote is called Loser of the Year, and it really did not age very well. Because then I went on to win a Grammy. So I guess this song would have to be like maybe for my enemies or something. Loser of the year, there's nothing I can do. The world has made it clear, I guess, that I was born to lose. Loser of the year, accepting his award for always falling short and always falling on his sword. Loser of the year, loser of the year. I'd like to thank my family, ooh, 'cause losing's in my blood. To the ancestors who failed me, I wish you could see what I have become. Loser of the year, 5th year in a row, they didn't notice I was here until they wanted me to go. Loser of the year, to all my friends at home for the amusement of my peers, I'm all dressed up, nowhere to go. Loser of the year, I'd like to thank my maker, holy, if there is a God above. Do you hear my prayer? She'll bend me till I'm breaking. They all said I couldn't make it. Well, mama, here I come. Loser of the year, that always came in last. You always wrote me off. Now look who wants an autograph from loser of the year.
We'll take a break. We'll come back. We'll get Dave to the table so we can talk more about rustic overtones, post-rustic overtones, what he's doing now. So we'll be right back with you. Stick with us. Thanks a lot. Hey, everybody. We're back here. We're at Friday PM. We're live. We're with Dave. We're going to sit and talk a little bit about kind of the whole journey, right? It's very exciting. I'd known Dave from, I mean, we didn't really know each other too well, but we all kind of grew up in the same circles in Portland in the 90s, the music scene. But it's been a really wild adventure. And I just want to kind of start out, like you grew up in Gorham, Maine?
Yes,
Yep.
I did.
Okay.
Um,
Yep.
Just played in. I started playing jazz drums when I was like 8,
Okay.
which I don't know how an 8-year-old plays jazz. I think all 8-year-olds play jazz drums.
Right.
It's just what comes first. You know, the free form imagination, and then I played guitar after that when I was about 10, and I mean, we were playing in bars when we were 11. I don't know how that works.
Yeah.
but
But it was
we
done
were.
quickly.
It's a different time.
Yeah. So you started with jazz drums. A lot of times the people start with piano, but that was, you seem, like you have a lot of.
Yeah, I liked Animal from the Muppets. You
Right,
know, I had a lot of
right.
energy. I was like, you know,
So at that time, I mean, right now you seem like kind of a master of melody, but you started out drums, so you were kind of percussion oriented at first. And so you're in Gorham. Did you move like a lot of us did? I grew up in Portland, but were you kind of a guy that you kind of migrated here? It's not a long ways from Gorham
yeah.
to like the Portland music scene. You found folks because we were talking about how you kind of got
Yeah.
together with Rustic.
Well, it's mostly I would come here in high school because I would want to see shows.
Right.
And like I said, it's a different time. I even at, like 17, I used to be able to get into the tree
Right.
and see Black Uhuru or the Bad Brains or something, or go to Zoots. I played at Zoots, so I often got in there. So I was always wanting to be around the Portland clubs and the Portland music scene. And, really young, we began, meeting everybody. And I feel now like it's like this one giant family, because I know generations of musicians.
Well, yeah, it was in those days. Yeah, it was like you said, Zoots, the Tree. That's the same place as I grew up at. Were you kind of working downtown? Like everybody in those days kind of would be a waiter or a busboy at,
I
like the
delivered
Siemens Club or
I delivered pizza.
I deliver pizza too. I was at Pizza Time actually.
Oh, okay. I was at Supreme Pizza,
Supreme Pizza,
and
yeah,
I lived on Brackett Street,
Hackett Street.
right there. So I just walked to work.
So, like, how did Rustic Overtones? Because everybody my age, we know the story, but what was the origin story? How did you guys kind of come together? Was that you put an ad in the newspaper or something? Or?
We got one guy with an ad.
Yeah.
We were trying to fledge out the horn section, and Jason Ward, our baritone sax player, answered ad because of all the bands we said we were into. But mostly it was a friend of a friend, and we were out there. We were doing gigs, like I said, from really little. So other kids in other schools and everything, they wanted to be like, oh, I want to be in this band.
Yeah.
I played the saxophone in the high school concert band, but I could go on the weekend and be in a bar
Right.
for 3 hours playing music. So like people wanted to be in the band. It was like a fun thing to do. And at first, like the floodgates were just open. It was like we would let anyone who was our friend and had an instrument, you could be in the band.
You could be in the band.
And that's how we ended up with such a large band.
Because I remember that. I remember it was a lot of guys. I would see you guys playing a lot at what was a play? Was it Granny? It was what was the big one up? It became the Portland Phoenix, and it was up court by where Yosako is now, and it was upstairs, and all those pool tables.
Oh yes.
Not Granny Killiam's, was it?
Was that Moose Alley?
Moose Alley, yeah.
You know what Moose Alley used to do? They used to just put an ad in the paper. And we would be like, you can't just put an ad saying we're playing. Like, we might have plans that day. We might be doing something. And they would just run the ad, and they'd be like, fine, don't play then. And we'd be like, well, what if like 3 of our fans go? Like, if any of our fans show up to this thing, you've already advertised in Face Magazine or whatever. So we would just show up and do the gig, and we'd be mad, but there was nothing we could do about it. So like, well, we knew you'd want to play. We knew you're not doing anything better.
Because you're young guys and you're hungry for the time. I mean, that's always could be a side topic for a whole show is, I remember when the Phoenix was such a great way for young musicians, and now it seems like it's a political magazine. It doesn't really seem like it focuses on music anymore.
Right.
It was kind of the heyday, it felt like, of music.
I agree. There was a lot of I felt like the music rags, the bands, the record stores
Yeah.
as well, the independent, Bull Moose, obviously,
Bull Moose.
Bad Habits.
Bad Habits.
Yeah. And it was all like this kind of circle of artists that all kind of helped each other out, and it was really cool. And they used to, of course, have the flyer wars. We staple the flyers to the thing, and people would put a flyer over your flyer. I mean, they still do that now, but it's more like, Facebook blast.
That's what I had heard from some of the younger rappers that have been on my show. Yeah, it's all Facebook. They don't think of the flyers as much anymore. In those days, so like, do you feel that now there's still, it's you had said it's still the same community? Is it hasn't changed as much now that it's, the younger kind of scene?
Well, I think that there were certain venues and certain events and certain things that were happening, including, Rustic, when we were signed and all that. There was like this excitement that pushed everyone. But there were things that made the scene more of a community. And it's getting more like that, but I guess kind of like the Battle of the Bands kind of thing.
I remember
Clash
those,
the
yeah.
Titans, or the things where it wasn't like cover music to like make a buck. It was just like, we want to play a gig on a Wednesday night, and we wouldn't normally have a gig on a Wednesday night. So those kind of things like brought all the musicians together, and people played with people from other bands. And also the practice spaces are a big it's a big place for like the community of musicians to meet each other. That's where I met everybody. There's the Prime was a space out that's gone now, but it's over by Thompson's Point, and there's Grime Studios, and there's a whole bunch of them. But
So, like in those days, because of basically kind of what's happened now with gentrification, in a sense, like there's probably not those spaces available as much, maybe, and that makes it a little bit.
my space is kind of like one of those spaces.
Yeah. You have a studio, okay. You should always. Is that something that musicians can talk to you about? Is that something you ever want to just mention there?
DaveGutter@gmail.com if you want to reach out and you need a studio space. But yeah, we do it kind of like either by the month, usually to like producers and musicians and stuff. But you know, we do the thing kind of like Stuntiki does, where if you need a place to practice, you can come
practice there.
practice there too,
Yeah.
or shoot a video or whatever.
And so I was kind of thinking the question I had was like, how did you guys get signed to a major label? Like people, a lot of bands now, I talk to all these young bands and they're like, well, you know, it seems so far away. Like, how did that all happen?
Smoke and mirrors.
Yeah, right.
We had, I've actually just started, I found out about this like late in my career, but we had a manager named Bill Beasley who owned that club, Granny Killam's, that we used to play at.
Yeah.
And he sold that club, took the money from it, and was like, I'm going to manage this band. And I'm going to take this band as far as I possibly can. And he was kind of a genius, because now it's kind of commonplace to high post and be kind of fraudulent about what you got going on, because social media, everything looks so perfect. But back then, he was doing it, and we didn't even know. I found out way after that he was hiring street teams to buy our albums back from the stores.
Okay.
So we would chart.
Yeah.
And he was having street teams call and request our songs on the radio, so we would chart. And he would have a showcase in New York and invite record labels to come, and he would hire actors, and he would bus people up from Maine and make sure the place was packed.
Right.
Even to us, I was like, you know, how's this punk rock girl with a nose ring and the mohawk
You look so perfect. Right?
know my music? I'm from a small town in Maine. And he did this, you know, the whole fake it till you make it thing. He was doing that behind the scenes while we were trying to just make, we just have always loved music.
Right.
And the business part of it has kind of been an extraction from what we do. And that's part of the reason why we've always ended up in these bad contracts and stuff, because we're like, if there's ever anyone that can do the business side of it, we don't want to be involved in that. It kind of stunts the creativity a little bit. I think when you're you know, thinking about the song as a monetary thing rather than the song as something that is fulfilling as a writer. Because first of all, that point in the studio when you make the song, when you hit that spot where you're like, that clicks, that works, that's the success part of the song. It's not after that. It's not whether anyone hears it. You know, the success part is the fact that you created this puzzle and you figured it out. You know what I mean? So I think a lot of the Maine music scene, because you were saying it seems so far away, we don't have that industry looming over our shoulder. We're not there. It's more so now because the internet, but a lot of musicians, when I came up, we were just like all about, it was about the car play. You get a joint and you tell your friend to come in your car and you play them your new song.
Right,
because they're in a band and they play music and you look up to them and you think that they have good taste. And that was always the bar that we set. It's just like, play it for my friend in the car, play it for my friend who loves music.
And in that topic, was it, you know, I think back to those days, because once again, I was, as a listener, I was really plugged into stuff, and I wanted to be a musician. I'm a left-handed guy that couldn't get an instrument that fit, and so I would try to do it the other way of, you know, playing it wrong. And
Like Jimi Hendrix.
Jimi Hendrix,
Yeah,
but I was
he
playing,
didn't really go anywhere
didn't
either.
go anywhere. Or Kirk, all these guys, but they were able to flip it, so they were actually playing it, but I would try to play right-handedly.
Oh, without flipping the strings.
Yeah, exactly. So it was a mess. But the thing that I think of was the things like CYY, how that was such a bit. I mean, that to me felt like they were like where it was at, and that kind of helped you guys, I assume, right?
Yeah, well, there was kind of a perception that all of the bands that were around here, there was a perception, one, that we were all famous.
Right.
Because CYY started off as an independent station, and they could play whatever they wanted. And they worked with all the bands. They put on shows with us. We came up together. CYY started with us.
Right.
And like when Rustic got signed, they got signed, and they got, I forget who it was first, like Citadel or something, but they no longer had control over their artistry, and the same thing, happens to bands. I'm not blaming them for that, but there was a point where all of a sudden they weren't playing all these local bands all the time, and it seemed a little bit like the scene just fell off because everyone was like, I'm used to hearing Rotors to Rust right after Soundgarden and Twisted Roots and whoever and Spose, and it was really this ecosystem where people around here just thought that everyone in the scene was huge. They thought they were just like a real band. You know what I mean? So when you played a show around here, you had a real show, and I think that's how the scene got elevated from that initial CYY coming here. And also, I mean, USM station.
Yeah, right. WMPG, I think.
Yep.
Is that right?
Yep, MPG.
Well, that's because I felt like that in those days that was like really a big thing, and then they cross promoted and things like that. I digress a lot, but I think that the big question, so because I really think most of viewers are like me, we're curious. So what happened with Rustic Overtones? We knew kind of part of it. We knew you guys were right there. It was at the pinnacle, and then all of a sudden, it kind of got, something happened, and you have a pretty interesting story about that.
Yeah, well, there's two different dynamics. There's a dynamic that we're signed, and we're signed because of all this stuff that our manager did. So we don't want to be celebrities. We don't want to have a hit song, but we're working within a machine that's all they care about.
Right.
So we would have our finger on the pulse of like the music that was out at the time and want to do the complete opposite because we were like, we have a chance. I always loved, you were talking about these backlashes in music.
Right.
And I always loved the bands that came out of nowhere. They didn't sound like anything else. And they just put a whole bunch of people out of business.
Right.
Like Nirvana came along and like buy Poison, buy Motley Crue. You guys are over because Nirvana is like dirty and they're raw and they're not all dolled up, and that music had eaten itself, and whenever that happens, you have these backlashes. We always hoped to be the backlash to something that was happening in the mainstream. Like if we have Clive Davis behind us, we get a chance to be out there, then we want to do this. So we were always fighting and butting heads with them creatively because we were trying to break new ground, and they were trying to just do what would sell. But then Clive Davis, who was our ally, he was the president of Arista, and he signed Aerosmith and Aretha Franklin and Whitney Houston, tons and tons and tons of people. But he got ousted. His contract was up with Arista, so we no longer had that ally there. L.A. Reid came in, who someone told me the other day is canceled now.
Yeah.
So
right, I heard.
right,
that,
good.
Right.
We did not get along with L.A. Reid at all. He did not like the rock department.
Right.
He wanted pop music. He wanted R&B music. He wanted rap music, and he hated us. But we were in a contract, and so we did all these things to try to assimilate with each other. And he was like, all right, well, maybe I could, put out your record if it sounds like this. So he remixed, he had our song Feast or Famine remixed.
Oh my God.
And he replaced all the horns with like fake horns and replaced our drummer with drum machines, which we're not against any of these things.
Tony McNabo, he probably
Yes.
wasn't too happy about that, right?
Was it? But
Remember
I
him?
mean, we programmed drums too. Like we like that kind of stuff, but it was just very square. So they snail mailed a CD. That's to put perspective what it was like back then. Is they sent us a CD in the mail, this mix, and we had a video camera. We had everywhere with us, and we videotaped us lighting the CD on fire, and we all got in a circle and pissed on it.
Right.
These are the kind of decisions that led to Rustic not working out in the corporate world of music.
Right.
But, you know, because we grew up, as like skateboarders, listening to like punk rock music. and
Right, right.
We didn't want to be normal, and we didn't want to be mainstream, really. And we started off DIY. We were very successful. And then all of that happened. We moved to Tommy Boy, our A&R from Arista, left Arista, got a job at Tommy Boy, brought us over there, put out the record on that label. But it was a crazy experience. I mean, we spent $1 million on our record in New York City with David Bowie, Tony Visconti, and it was an amazing experience that changes the way I approach waking up every day. You know what I
Well,
mean? Like,
and yeah, and I think that's, and you know, I want to make sure we touch on all of your things, but if we have time to circle back before I know you have another thing you have to get to, I do want to talk about what a lot of the viewers don't know, like how you become a slave to the record company, in a sense that $1 million, every penny that album would ever make they had to get paid first, you know, that kind of thing.
Right.
That the whole industry, and that might be for a whole other show, but I also wanted to talk about kind of what we talked about, because I said post Rustic Overtones. That's not true. Rustic Overtones are still together. We're going to do a graphic up here in a second that talks about where you guys are playing this summer. That's not a secret anymore, right?
Nope.
You guys are playing at the Army Festival August 4th and 5th, and that's in like somewhere but Camden, Rockland area. Searsmont. So if you can find it on a map, get out there. Did you
cool
guys?
place.
You probably went to see it maybe a different time. don't know
I
if
did it with my solo band.
Solo band
last
before,
year,
yeah.
and it was super fun.
Cool time, yeah.
Will Bradford from CD
Will
Bulls,
Bradford,
it's his
put us
birthday.
together. Yeah,
So
exactly.
he's kind of undercut that now, or played it down. But this is basically his birthday party that
Okay.
he's throwing for himself.
Sure. Cool.
But
cool.
he brought us together tonight,
Yep.
and I'm psyched about this. Will is amazing. Will lent me the guitar that I played
Yeah,
tonight.
okay.
He helps me record stuff. We book shows together. But this is a great time. It's gotten bigger this year, and I'm excited. But I thought it was a great place for Rustic to kind of celebrate our catalog. I mean, we've made, I don't know, like 8 or 9 albums or something like that, and there's a lot of stuff that we've never even played
Yeah, I
live.
even played live.
So after our trombone player Dave Noyes passed away,
Okay.
which is a anniversary was a few days ago of that, we were just like having a hard time in the creative process, or I was, because he was so involved in that. It was always me and Dave Noyes writing something. And the way that Rustic worked was I would be the punk guy that brought in the song with the power chords.
Right.
And he was the sophisticated
I
guy.
get
He
it,
read
right.
music, he studied music in school, and he would add all these orchestrations and obviously horn parts, but beyond that, strings, percussion, all kinds of stuff, backing vocals. That gave Rustic its sound, and he was kind of an unassuming guy, but he really had a lot to do with those musical decisions.
Well, and that was, I was going to say, because to me, that was the secret sauce of Rustic Overtones. It was your kind of punk, you know, the delivery, but those power chords mixed with that, but really,
Right.
you know, jazzy stuff. But there was always those two things, a real hard and then real moving around a lot on things. And so I'm sorry to hear that about him. I just saw something about that. But yeah, so the Army Festival, that's coming up. I think we're hoping to cover it here at PMC, go up there with a team and stream it all live. So that'll be a lot of fun. We'll enjoy checking that out.
Last year, I got very drunk, and I pitched a tent, and I had all these blankets and pillows and everything, and I just woke up like sweating, face down, like on like just the polyester. It was gross, but it was the only time I camped last summer, so it was good. Last summer was like the first summer we started getting busy after the pandemic. So
After the yeah, exactly. And at 80 degrees out there. No, I mean, I look forward to it. I'm hoping that our team can get a hotel room somewhere, like at a Super 8 nearby or something, and just cover it like that Woodstock that was ill-fated. There's a new documentary
Oh, I
about
love
it.
that. I love that.
Burning it all down. It seems like it'd be a cool thing. But while we have you here, let's talk about kind of like after the whole situation with Rustic Overtones in 2000, 2001, you decided to do more solo work, right? Is that
Yep.
kind of, and
Well, I did Paranoid Social Club,
oh, that's right. I remember those guys. Yeah.
which is just it was like a power pop,
Power pop,
kind of
yeah.
back to the stuff that I did.
Yeah.
We lightened it up a little bit for Rustic. Like Rustic was me at my most not musically restrained, but disciplined.
Right.
Going from punk rock to listening to James Brown, listening to Bob Marley, and being like, okay, there's this intricacy that Rustic had. We threw that out the window for Paranoid, and then about 10 years ago, I started writing songs for other people. I had a friend, Eric Krasno, who's from the band Soul Live, and Lettuce, and he's also a producer who's worked with Tedeschi Trucks Band, Justin Timberlake, 50 Cent. So he called me at a time where I just had a really bad breakup. And I'd written all these songs that were just really kind of like pity party songs. And I was thinking to myself, I was like, I just wrote like 35 songs that I don't want to put out on a record because all my fans are going to just be like, bummer, this sucks. And then he reached out to me and was like, I'm working with a bunch of blues artists. Do you have any interest in writing the blues? And I'm like, I got the blues.
You got the blues.
I got the blues. So I started doing that and started working on his album, Blood from a Stone. That was the first non-instrumental album that Eric Krasno did. And I did all the lyrics for that and a lot of the top line melodies and some of the chord songwriting and everything. But with him, he came up here and did it. So that's how I got started on the songwriting. That led to Aaron Neville and others, but
Right.
led to
Well, that's for the audience, Dave, because he's not going to want to talk glowingly about himself, but I will. So Dave just won a Grammy for co-writing a song with Eric Krasner. Was his name?
Eric Krasno.
Krasno. They just won a Grammy for Grammy Award-winning. Get a close-up on that if you can, and he'll get it. So they won a Grammy like a month or two ago, right?
Month yet?
Yeah, and so it was with the singer Aaron Neville, who most people my age will know, the Neville brothers, New Orleans, very well-known guys there. And so what I wanted to ask you about that because I think that's an interesting story. So you're working with Paranoid Social Club, you're kind of branching off, doing work with your writing partner, and then you guys you have an agent, a writing. How do you kind of find your way to the audition? Right, you said.
Yeah, well, Eric was kind of the conduit for all that stuff. He had the agent, he had the manager, he had the connections, but he had lived in the jazz world his whole career, so he knew a lot about arranging, composing, producing, but had never had any experience with lyric writing.
Yeah.
So that's mostly where I came in, and he had worked with Bruno Mars was his lyric writer before me.
Yeah.
And then when I started writing with Eric, Bruno Mars actually met up with Eric Krasno and said, I heard you have a secret weapon songwriter.
Yeah.
So
Okay. This
I
is
was,
cool. Yeah.
it was all like very inspiring to be in these situations where it's like, okay, there's these big people that I have to, I was always in situations where everyone had a Grammy. Everyone would order very expensive food, and I would say I'm not hungry, and I'll go to the deli and get a turkey sandwich.
Right.
I was always in those sessions, so it's kind of cool to, this year kind of feel like I am part of that whole squad now, because I've always felt, even just especially at the Grammys, like such an imposter. But yeah, these shoes are a anonymous gift from a friend.
That's cool.
But they take the Grammy away from you.
Okay.
You get to hold it, you get to touch it, you get to take pictures with it. But there's only like 5 or 6 Grammys backstage.
Yeah.
So my hope is maybe that the Grammy that I touched, maybe Beyonce touched later.
Exactly. Right.
Something like that. And then they mail you stuff out. As a songwriter for the song, I get like a plaque that says I wrote a song that won a Grammy. But yeah, it's been great.
But you're the type of guy, you don't seem like you'd be putting it up on your wall and, oh, look at me, the Grammy,
Well,
maybe you would. I know. All right.
Maybe you don't know me very well.
Right.
I've been gloating quite a bit. I go to it was especially when I was nominated, I was just like walking on sunshine. I was like, I didn't care if I won or not, just to be able to be like,
Just to be nominated.
I'm a Grammy nominated songwriter. Hire me helps my work.
Oh, yeah.
So, when I was nominated, I'd just be places and I would just be kind of like, oh, zippity doo dah. And I'd be at like Hannaford and like, how are you today? Beep, beep. I'm good. I'm actually really, really good. Really good.
Right.
I nominated for a Grammy. I
Right.
write songs and I was just gloating all the time and I couldn't help it. But yeah, I went with my daughter. I brought my
You have a
16-year-old daughter.
16-year-old daughter.
And when
right?
she
I
was
saw
8,
that, yeah.
when she was 8, that was when we did. So I got to go back a little bit because we did the songs for Aaron Neville 8 years ago.
Okay.
And the reason why this was up for a Grammy this year is because it was performed in a documentary about New Orleans called Take Me to the River.
Okay. Yeah.
And that soundtrack is what the song won a Grammy for being on the soundtrack. So it was like resurrected again this year through movies, which is amazing.
And people can catch that documentary, some probably on
Yep.
Amazon or
Yep.
rental on Netflix and things like that.
Yep.
But so are you still wanting to be like, is the next chapter more writing or more? It seems like you're performing it really sounds great.
Oh,
And I
thanks.
feel like that's your love. I mean, the guys in the studio, we were blown away by it. We've been trying to perfect the sound here, and so it's everything sounded excellent. When you get to see it back on tape, you'll enjoy it. But is that really your next feeling? Is you want to be, I mean, you've been performing the whole time, but I mean, what's kind of the crossroads you're at now, if there is one?
Well, that's the thing about me and the way I've stayed alive as a musician through this whole time. First of all, I'm very grateful I've had such a long career in such a difficult field, and in order to do that, I've had to be a jack of all trades. I hope I'm not a jack. Maybe I'm the king, but
King, right?
I don't want to say king, but basically doing everything. So like today I was producing and writing for another artist, and actually I'm going to a studio session after this tonight to do writing and producing. I like writing, producing. I like creating something and then going to see like what happens to it because I used to be like, oh, I don't want to write songs for other people. These are my songs.
Right.
But then I realized sometimes when you write for somebody, your song gets way bigger than you. Like when I was in Hollywood, my song was on the guest list, but I wasn't.
Your song, yeah.
My
exactly.
song, so it was kind of cool. It's as a writer to see songs you write take on another life, and it's also cool when you write a song for yourself. You look inward at yourself and you kind of sum yourself up. This is who I want to be. This is what I want to say. It's so much easier to look at somebody else.
Right.
And then, and I wouldn't write that song for me.
Right.
I'd write that song for Aaron
Yeah.
Neville. So it was never a thing where like, I don't want to give up my songs anymore.
So is there, as a writer, do you feel that like there's only so much gas in the tank? Like, well, in other words, I only say that, I don't mean that in that bigger way, but I mean where sometimes a writer might not want to give away that prized possession because will I ever get that inspiration again? That's what I mean. I don't mean do you feel like you don't have enough gas in the tank, but is that as a writer, it's kind of hard
You
to.
want to hoard them?
Yeah, I mean, it's like you're giving your baby up for adoption, and is that something that's got to be hard to do? But then when you see that baby go on to another home and thrive and all this,
Yeah, exactly.
and you get to be the godfather of it or something
Well,
like
that's
that.
that's some of the things is I've written thousands of songs, and I've seen some songs that are my favorite songs that I'm so proud of, and I put so much work into. Some of those kind of just sit on an album somewhere. They're in kind of a black hole, and I feel a little sad for those songs.
Yeah, yeah.
So like if I see any opportunity for my song to go someplace bigger than me, that's amazing. One story that was funny at the Grammys, talking about my song being on the guest list, but I'm not.
Right.
I went after I won the Grammy. My daughter and I went to go walk the red carpet, and we get up to the entrance, and they're like, "Let me see your Grammy passes." So I, there you go.
Yeah.
And we didn't know there was levels. There's levels.
Right.
We were on the bottom level.
Right.
And they're like, "Yeah, you guys can't come in." And so I was like, "Listen, I'm from a small town in Maine. I've been playing music since I was 8 years old. I'm 48 right now.
40.
I just won a Grammy, and I just brought my 16-year-old daughter to the Grammys from Maine, and we just want to take a picture on the red carpet." And they printed out 2 all-access, everything passes. They gave us passes to, like, we didn't even go to the after party. But, it would have been all the famous people. We were kind of like afraid of the famous people.
Yeah, I mean, but did you you went to all the parties or did you?
No, we walked the red
Yeah.
carpet, which was like stepping into a television.
Yeah,
It was
yeah.
insane. Walked in immediately, saw Trevor Noah and Chance the Rapper and so many, I can't even begin. It was just every single person that I saw was an actor or a musician, or even the people from like the news stations. I was like, "Oh my God, the guy from E! News."
Right, like the guy from Saved by the Bell, like Mario Lopez or something.
Yeah.
Well, but I think even with, even though, at your age as well, you're also living vicariously through your daughter too. At 16, she was probably thought this is, at least for that day, her dad was her hero, especially, although
Right.
it's every day. But so you have a 16-year-old daughter,
Yep.
okay, and she's studying here in Maine and high school, and yeah.
Yep. She's a junior in high school. She plays volleyball. She plays bass. Just started playing the bass.
She's
and
playing
very
bass
good at
too.
bass.
That's cool.
Actually, since the Grammys, she was like, "You know what? I think
Right.
obviously any idiot can do this. Give me a bass."
Bass guitar. I always heard it's the easiest to be proficient at. It's the hardest to get really good at.
I love the bass. I've been
Yeah.
playing. Actually, my bass credits. I'd like to talk about my bass credits
Yeah,
because
we got time.
I have been behind the scenes playing bass, and I accidentally ended up on Jaden Smith's new
Yeah,
album
yeah.
playing bass.
Yeah.
Will Smith's.
Son or
Son.
daughter? Son. Okay.
Yeah.
Willow's the daughter, right?
Yep. And I also am on Eric Krasno's new record, which is to me mind blowing because he's surrounded by like the best musicians in the world, and I'm just over here pretending I'm doing like again imposter. And then the first time I ever played bass on a record was everyone left, and I was at a session with the Roots,
Yep.
the Jimmy Fallon band, and it was me and Questlove and James Poyser in the studio, and they were like, "We want to make this bridge," and they were like, "Let's try to lay down this idea before anyone gets back." And they're like, "Yeah, just grab the bass and play." I'm like, "Okay." This is my first time ever. It was 4 chords, easy, but Questlove was playing the drums. So,
The drums.
like that's a crazy rhythm section to be part of when you just walk into a session. So
This
yeah.
was the first time you were playing the bass, you're saying?
Yeah, these
Okay.
are my bass credits.
But isn't it? I always find that if you're playing with really good people, it helps you to level up, right? Because
Yeah.
they're just at that guy's drums. It's really easy to. He's never fallen out of rhythm or anything,
The
right?
secret is just to not be flashy. Just
Right. Just
sit back.
yeah, exactly. Right. Just have the groove. Yeah.
Let the other person shine that knows what they're doing.
Well, while we still have you here, because I know you got to go someplace by
Yep.
10, I remember we talked about this new band that you have. You have an interesting thing with the name of the band.
Yes, Dave Gutter and the blank. We've had a bunch of different ones. We change our name every show. We encourage the audience members at the Army Fest. We're playing that, and we're Dave Gutter and the strongly worded email.
Okay. All right.
We've been Dave Gutter and the Late Night Daddies.
Yeah.
Dave Gutter and the Bad Clams.
Yeah.
Dave Gutter and the Male Pattern Eagles.
Yeah.
So it's fun. Not only did me and my wife sit around stoned thinking about band names
about
all the
ideas,
time,
right.
but you never have to land on one.
Right.
And because we always hated the name Rustic Overtones, and we were just stuck with it because we had a following.
Yeah.
So, now I get to change the band name all the time. Although
Yeah.
I am a little partial to Dave Gutter and the Late Night Daddies. That's my
That
favorite.
sounds kind of cool. Yeah. Well, and it is interesting. I think you've been asked this question a million times of what's the Rustic Overtones meaning? And it's probably just not necessarily a meaning. But
There is a
maybe-
meaning. There is a meaning.
Right.
It's us in high school looking for a band name, looking at oxymorons and looking through a thesaurus with our friend Rob. And we were trying to find something. At that point, we played parties. And we played some covers because our parents hired us. And we'd be playing like for old people.
Yeah.
And they would be like, well, we like you guys. You're a little loud,
Right.
and we don't know any of the songs. So could you play this song, play that song, play this Buddy Holly song, play this Beatles song? But we still played them hard. So then we would play the shows at Zoots and stuff. We still played those songs, but we played like our punk rock versions of it.
Okay. Yeah.
So rustic was a synonym for old.
Yeah. Rustic.
And overtones, like it's like kind of old. That's kind of what rustic overtones meant. It was like we kind of do things old in a new style. That was the idea back then, which I guess we kind of grew into our name because we did have kind of a big, like jazz, reggae, Motown influence. But yeah, that's where that name came from, and we always hated it. But yeah, we never changed it.
Well, so where can people see you coming up? Where can they find, you had stuff that you want to talk about with, where they can find you online, social media. Tell everybody that, because I know you got to get going here by
Yep.
10, and you'd be surprised. It might be almost 10 right now.
Okay.
We've been having such a good time, but what's the best way to find where you're at on Facebook and everything?
Dave Gutter Instagram, or Dave Gutter and the Instagram.
Okay.
Rustic Overtones at Instagram, Facebook. I'm actually playing a show tomorrow. Carnival down by DeMillo's.
Eastern, oh, is that
I think they do it down by DeMillo's now.
DeMello's now? Okay.
Outdoor heated type of thing.
Yeah.
So what I heard, that's why I agreed to do
Hopefully, right,
it.
right.
But that's my solo band. And I don't know if we have a name. So maybe if someone calls into the show
I was going to say, if
and
they
gives you a name,
come up
you
with a
could-
name.
you could pass it along to me.
I will.
Tomorrow I'll announce that.
So that's going to be the same thing where it could be Dave Gutter and the Carnival Kids or something like that, right? So
that might be it.
it's an idea.
Yeah.
Well, check these guys out it's going to be like 7 p.m. There's tickets probably still available.
3 p.m.
3 p.m., yeah.
3 p.m. Yep.
It's the Winter Carnival, I think. It's going to be a lot of fun. Dave, I really appreciate you
Thanks.
coming here. It's so
Yeah,
generous
thanks for
of
having
you.
me.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably the last time I'll ever have a Grammy winner on my show.
Oh no, I'll
But-
come on again.
Come on again. Bring Rustic Overtones closer to the show in the summer. I'd love to have you guys. We can get a big band here. It doesn't look like it in the studio, but we can.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
been-
Thanks a lot, guys.
thanks.
We'll be right back. Thank you. Hey, everybody. We're back. I really want to thank Dave Gutter. That was a great interview with him, some great music. But now I've got the River Comics, Nick and Leonard, right? Yep. Do you guys go by last names, or is it just Nick and Leonard? Is it like
We usually go by Leonard and Nick.
Leonard and Nick, exactly, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
When we perform individually, it's Nick Gordon or Leonard Kimball.
Yes, yes. But it's not like Penn and Teller, or it's not like there's also, what are the two Lion Tamer guys? Remember those guys? What was their names?
Siegfried and Roy.
Siegfried and Roy. Yeah. But so,
Yeah.
well, you got eaten by a lion.
Yeah, okay.
Well, so,
Didn't see that.
right, didn't see it coming, exactly. But so the funny thing is, you guys are part of the River Comics, but so I always think about it's like, here's the River Comics. You guys formed the River Comics group, which is a collective, but you guys you are technically the River Comics but you aren't just the River Comics. Right, and we'll get to that. We'll get to that. So in the meantime, I wanted to just start from the beginning because we had a good conversation before about. So Leonard, you grew up in Chicago. You were a little ways away from Maine, Midwest area.
Yeah. I went to, so I was born in Chicago, grew up through high school there, and went to MIT, and that's where I met my wife-to-be, who was from Auburn. And so after 7 years of courting, she finally gave in, and we got engaged and moved to her hometown instead of my hometown. Maine has been like fantastic to live. Yeah, the quality of life here, cost of living has been great, and we have two wonderful kids, and we live in Auburn now.
Well, so you go from Chicago to Boston and MIT,
Right.
and I think she told you she lived in LA, and you said, I'm going. I was sunshine. It's going to be awesome. And
No snow.
different LA, and she thought, and Lewiston, Auburn is a different LA.
Right.
And so you end up in Lewiston. You had kids with her in Lewiston.
Auburn. Yeah.
In Auburn.
Yeah,
and then
she'll kill
Yep.
me if I
I mentioned, I mean, you could say hi if they're watching. I mean, there's, it's might be late for them. And so, but Nick, you grew up in Maine. I think in
Yeah.
Portland, you said.
I grew up in Portland. I was
Portland.
born in northern Maine, Presque Isle,
Presque Isle, way out
Worcester
there.
County, almost Canadian.
Yeah.
But no, grew up in Portland all my life. All my schooling, all my young adult life has been in Portland till just recently.
Until recently.
Yeah.
Well, it was funny. My mom, she's been building senior housing. That's been her thing. Was a real estate person. She has some up in Presque Isle. So we know that one Chinese restaurant up there, that tiki type of lounge
Yep.
or something. You
Yep.
remember that?
I was 6 months old when we moved out, just in time.
Just in time to get out of
But
there. Right.
I've been back since.
You've seen it,
And,
yeah.
and I do know. I have a love for both parts of Maine.
Right,
Having been from there, but grown up in Portland.
So jumping ahead on a question, because we'll swing back to it. But do you guys play like that far, or do you keep yourselves in kind of this area?
How far north have we gone?
We've gone all the way to Bangor.
Wait, no, Castine?
No, that's kind of you got to
That's
go
far,
up to come.
yeah.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
Maritime.
he's not from here.
I'm from away.
right,
I'm sorry.
Well, Castine, I mean, it technically might not be that much further than Bangor from here. I mean, it's
Yeah.
still a couple hours. But so you guys went and did comedy at clubs in Bangor before?
Yeah, we tried to do a show in Bangor at one point, pre-pandemic, and actually just before the pandemic, we did that show in Castine at a nice little inn. We had a great time there. We had a great show
Right.
at the Manor Inn, and then the whole world stopped.
Whole world stuff. So, I mean, that's a funny question. Like, were you guys doing, like these people that were doing comedy shows over Zoom, or were you saying, you were? Yeah.
We did some Zoom shows.
Some Zoom comedy
Too many,
shows.
too many.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were.
Regrettable.
Well, it's just like this with nobody laughing.
With nobody laughing, exactly. Well, you have me laughing.
I know. Not
But
that you're nobody.
the things that I would just see is like these folks from Saturday Night Live, and they're doing Zoom from their apartment,
Yeah.
and they're just doing comedy, and there's dead silence, and they got a bit, and then they're waiting. Okay,
Yeah.
maybe they hear something somewhere.
I would hope so,
Right.
especially for those guys.
Yeah, we actually
Yeah.
did have a lot of people who were appreciative of us doing those shows. As brutal as they were and hard to do for the comics, we had a lot of comments from people saying like, "Oh, I missed those Zoom shows because I'm still not quite
Yeah.
safe, and I don't feel safe enough yet to go out of my house."
go out of
And,
your
and they wanted those shows.
Well, and did you have a way that you could just have everybody's laughing be a part of it? That seemed to be the one thing that I always, because Zoom, I guess, isn't set up that way. It's like one person at a time.
Right, exactly. And we did ask for people to put their microphones on one show, and my uncle was watching Jeopardy at the same time.
Yeah, is that what it was? And you have
So you get Jeopardy, you get dogs.
Yeah.
like Jeffrey Toobin who's watching the show and something. I don't know if you remember that guy.
No, but
CNN guy who got in trouble for, he was watching on the Zoom at the CNN meeting and doing other things. And
had a hot mic, did he?
yeah, hot thing. And he was dropped trowel.
Hand.
Yeah, he was watching something else when he thought it was on lunch break, and all the women go, "What is this guy doing?"
Right. No.
He's parading around. It was rough. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we didn't have any of those events.
Yes.
So you grew up in Presque Isle. Then you're in Auburn. So weren't you teaching like a comedy class at one time?
Yeah, that's how we met. 2018, the fall of 2018.
Right.
Lewiston Adult Ed asked me for some reason to teach a comedy writing class.
So they said but there was a reason.
Well,
right?
I mean,
They knew you were funny.
They
right?
knew I was
Yeah,
funny, and they've
right,
written a couple good jokes here and there.
too.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I said, all right, I'll give it a whirl. And fortunately, I did because I got to meet Leonard and a few
Right.
other folks that I'm friends with to this day, and
It was a fun time.
it was a good time.
Yes.
It was
And
a
it
good
was-
6 weeks, right?
yeah.
Right.
All right.
And that's how we realized that we should just hang out more together and
Yeah.
form a little group so we don't have to travel to other open mics. So let's just buy our own speakers and get an open mic going ourselves.
Yeah.
And so it was a comedy writing class, but stand-up writing, right?
Stand-up writing class was the idea.
So this is an interesting question. Like what would ostensibly be the difference between a stand-up writing class versus a stand-up performing class? Because kind of you have to be able to do both, because unless you want to be that guy like who's writing for other people maybe or something.
I think the idea with this class is that it was for adult ed students who had already taken the stand-up performing class.
Okay, right.
Wanted to hone some writing.
And had you taken that performing class?
Yes, I had.
You had, okay.
Right. So the class might be more for let's spend more time not necessarily thinking about the actual stagecraft of like, hey, hold the mic this way or move this mic stand,
Right,
or
right,
blah, 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 blah. But like actually looking at the actual words of your jokes and, where can you cut things or where can you add things, or hey, this might be more clear to the audience than that, as opposed to your actual ability to perform. It was like more about just actually the writing.
Getting the beats down on a page and
Yeah.
things like that. And I've actually filmed these guys before at the Craft Brew Underground, which is a great room. I mean, it reminds me of like these cellars that you see in New York.
Right.
And you can get 50 people in there and it sounds like uproarious, and so
It's
you can
amazing.
have some people in there can really kill because the audience is so hot. And seeing both of you guys, I feel like your comedy is a little bit self-depreciating at times,
absolutely,
right?
yeah.
And yours is kind of a little sarcastic, maybe. I don't know. It's hard to say. But what would you guys say for yourselves as kind of, is there a style that each of you feel like you have?
Over the years, I've definitely developed jokes that make fun of myself.
Right,
I have to make fun of myself.
Yeah.
There's been so many little things along the way in the last 40 plus years. It's like, how can I not talk about this?
right.
As opposed to talking about what's in the newspaper today.
You don't
you
want to be
try
a
every now and
pop,
again,
right,
but
right.
it's easier just to make fun of yourself, and people do relate to it. So hey, go with what works.
Yeah. And I mean, you have that likability. So I think that works in that sense of making jokes where you're not trying to make it at other people's expenses. Yeah.
Yeah.
And what about yourself, Leonard? I mean, you seem kind of it. I like your delivery is very dry. It's kind of, it's a certain kind of thing going.
He's a very dirty comic.
That's one of the, I guess that's the good and bad about my delivery. It is a little dry, and
Yeah.
I don't necessarily. I pause a lot on stage, and
Yeah.
and Nick makes fun of me because like I wait for laughter a lot, and I'll just sit there
Sometimes too long. Yeah.
sometimes way too long. I'll just sit there for a minute waiting for people to laugh, and like, oh great, someone chuckled at my just being standing there on stage awkwardly.
I should just add that I wasn't a great stand-up comedy joke writing teacher.
Yes.
So
Well, I think both of you guys have jokes that are very personal that make a lot of sense. But I think you guys both also have a lot of that presence, and that's unique of your own. Another interesting question that I always wonder, I mean, you guys, does anybody do comedy duos? Do you guys ever try to do something where you're both
Oh.
up there? Or I've seen you guys only doing solo.
we've talked about it. We
Yeah.
did, because we did a podcast together, and during the pandemic and a little bit after, where we knew that we had a good chemistry and that I could make him laugh and vice versa, and so I think we could get on stage together and do that, but. Leonard likes to do improv comedy. I don't, and
Yeah.
it's
It would require us to actually practice.
yeah. We'd have to
Work
we'd have
on
to do
something.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's also, when you guys are also running the shows,
Right.
sometimes you're each on there, or do you fill in for people if somebody can't get there? Because you guys also have, so I'll just explain a little bit because it's kind of like with Dave Gutter. I'll talk for you guys.
Go for it.
So the River Comics, they started out, it's a collective, and there's like 5 of you guys that are four that,
Yeah.
but they bring a lot of folks in from other states, from like Massachusetts. Saw a lot of folks, they'll drive in to play the shows.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, you sometimes maybe have to fill in for somebody. If somebody can't get in, they get a flat tire, or they get pulled over because they're driving something, smoking weed out the door, out to drive.
A comic? No.
You never know, right? Exactly.
Never.
But so, the River Comics as a group, are you mostly in Lewiston, Auburn? You do Portland sometimes shows? Like what should we know more about kind of where you guys are?
Well, most of our shows are in Lewis and Auburn.
Lewiston, Auburn.
Yeah.
We have shows in Farmington. We've done shows in Monmouth. We've done shows in Portland.
South Portland.
South Portland, right?
We try to go as many places as
Wherever, yeah.
Exactly.
Do you feel that, because I grew up in Farmington, my dad was a professor there of art.
Okay.
A college town, it's good place probably because of college scene a little bit for
Yeah.
comedy? Yeah.
We
seems like that
we
one.
go to a pizza place up there called
Right.
Mary Jane's Slice of Heaven. I don't know.
Probably was the same pizza place that I
Yeah.
went to when I was a kid.
Probably the same owner too, but
Probably old guy, yeah. It's like Angeloni's Pizza back in the. There's only so many places.
they sell out every time. It's
Yeah.
the thing.
Yeah.
It's like
Great-
every
great
time
crowd.
they're there, they love us.
Great owners. It's a fun time there.
Yeah.
So we're fast forwarding to when you guys met. You formed River Comics. I wanted to ask a couple just big picture questions too. Like, what's your guys' thoughts about comedy in Maine right now? I mean, there was a heyday. I mean, it was hot back when I was younger. 80s, 90s, Comedy Connection. I mean, I don't know about smaller towns, but Comedy Connection closed. I mean, now there's places, but where has comedy thriving in Maine, or you're bringing it back?
I think it's thriving. I don't think it's ever really gone away.
More grassroots
It's
now.
grassroots for sure, because back in 2012 when the Comedy Connection closed, that was the spot.
was
That's
the
where all the
spot,
comics wanted to be. And when that closed down, they had to find their own way. But there was so many of them already, implanted.
Right,
That
right.
they were able to branch off and do their own little thing.
If you build it, they will come.
Absolutely.
And they sprouted up in different places,
Now there's, I don't know, 5, 10 different people booking comedy.
booking shows.
And we're trying to do it as best we can and do it the right way and get as many people opportunities as possible in as many different spots. But I think the comedy scene in Maine is really great.
Just hot,
and
yeah.
people from away agree with us. You
Yeah.
know, they talk about it all the time. People from Boston and whatnot love coming up here. They get more opportunities to perform, longer sets, and they
Yeah.
like the rooms that we produce. So, I think it's a great scene,
And tell me also about that you were thinking about maybe kind of getting a roving club, and it might have some rebranding. We talked a little about that. You could tell the audience about that
Yeah.
too, maybe.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
You go.
Yeah, we're thinking about actually rebranding ourselves as a comedy club. And we're gonna call ourselves a Great Falls Comedy Club. And right now, our flagship location is Craft Brew Underground in Auburn, and we love that location so much. And we're in there 2 or 3 times every week. And so we might as well just say, like, this is our comedy club. Like, you welcome to the comedy club. It's in the back of Craft Brew Underground.
Right.
So we hope that'll raise some awareness of the comedy scene, not just in Lewis and Auburn, but in Maine in general. Get more patrons to come out there and get comedians to want to come to our spot and actually do comedy with us.
Our number one goal is when people Google comedy club, we want ours to be the first
To top
link.
one, right. Got to get a hold of whoever those Google guys are, sponsoring or something.
Right, to take a trip.
I mean, and I found, because I filmed with you guys there a couple of shows, they're very respectful to you guys. I mean, you have a good partnership with them. They were always very cool. Whereas when I've done a lot of video at other places with bands or even with stand-up, I mean, the places, it's like I'm in the way, the comics are almost in the way.
Right.
But I think it's also the track record. You guys bring money in for them. I mean, your shows sell out.
Yeah.
You do very well with it.
Yeah.
And you guys do those most Saturdays, it seems like, a couple of every Saturday night?
Every Saturday night we have comedy in that room at 7:00. Every second and fourth Friday we have comedy in that room, and every Wednesday we do an open mic,
Open mic.
which are all pretty well attended.
Yeah.
And it's great to see. I hope for more, but right now we've nothing to complain about. That's for sure.
Right.
And have you guys ever had anybody that's come from that open mic that you've started cultivating, that
yeah.
they get more time and everything? Yeah.
Absolutely.
There are lots of people who are taking comedy classes who have started even after I have. I've only been doing comedy for 5 years.
5 years, long time. But
Yeah, but we know people who have started comedy last year or the year before that who I've either met in a comedy class or we met them at our open mic, and they're getting really, really good at comedy. And there's lots of classes all over the state that people can take, and we're happy to help foster those people to get into comedy and give them some stage time and help build the scene.
kind of homegrown folks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And one other question. We'll take a break. You guys have a few minutes, right? Sure. Okay. Before we take a break, I mean, and say before, because I mean, this could be a big topic, but like, what's your guys' take on, I mean, you got to talk about politics and comedy now, or not even the politics, like Trump and Biden kind of thing, but how a lot of comedians are very worried, I mean, you could get canceled. You can say the wrong thing. Is that something that, I mean, does that even go through your head, or what's your guys' take on it? Why don't you tell me, Nick?
Well, what goes through my head is whatever can be the funniest thing.
Funniest thing. You don't worry too much about it.
I don't worry about it, and I have a real day job too, as does Leonard.
Right.
And potentially someone could hear something that I've said, and if they take it out of context and they have that much of a problem with it, we'll deal with that when we get to it.
Right.
So far, it hasn't been too terrible, I don't think, unless the HR department has been screening my calls. I don't know.
Right.
Well, and it's kind of like what happens at a nightclub. I mean, have you guys ever had incidents at a nightclub with a heckler or somebody who's outraged or gets up, or any weird stories like that?
We've been pretty fortunate.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've only had like really one close call with someone, but it wasn't like they were a heckler. It was right at the tail end of the pandemic.
There was the location we were at had a masking mandate, but there was also food being served, and it was kind of one
Yeah,
of those.
the Karen type.
Yeah,
Maybe he said, "I don't. Why is it? You can't tell me I got to wear a mask or something."
that's what it seemed to be. Unfortunately, there was a very good comedian on stage at the time, and
Right.
they
They
interrupted their
handled
set.
it.
Yeah.
Well, they handled it, but it interrupted the flow of the show, which is frustrating from a producer standpoint.
Right,
I'm
right.
sure you can agree.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
any little thing that happens that
Right.
takes
You're
away from the
you're
show.
hyper aware of everyone.
Yeah.
Everyone in the room. Like we notice when people are talking in the back of the room, even though the people up front may not notice it, we as producers will hear that conversation and be like, "Oh, what's going on? Yeah, can we get them to stop?"
Yeah.
But knock on wood, we've never had like an awful heckler experience. I don't know if it's just like maybe the different venues we've been at or have been good
Right,
spaces where those
Well,
people
that's
don't
what I
sort
was
of hang
going to
out.
say. I mean, it seems like you guys are smart about where the places you pick to play are.
Yeah.
I mean, when I was there, it's definitely a more adult crowd. There's not people that are out of control. You do your shows early too. Isn't that another thing I noticed? That most of your shows seem to take place at 7 o'clock. Well, that seems early. I mean, you're not doing it at 11.
Nick's getting old. He can't stay up that late.
Can't stay up. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they're tight too. Doesn't it seem like it's 7 till 8 or so, and you're not going to hang out.
An hour and a half
Hour and
comedy
a half.
show is a good show.
Right.
I remember when I used to live in Los Angeles, and I was trying to do the Hollywood thing, and I went to, I mean, it was probably the Improv. It was one of these bigger comedy clubs, and we had two different comedians on that night it was a ridiculous night. But one of the guys was Michael Richards,
Oh,
trying to do his comedy before he got canceled, and he was a terrible comedian. He's a good guy at his being Kramer and things, but when he decided he's going to be a stand-up comic, he was bombing, and then about 2 months later, you see the whole thing
Yep.
where he's bombing and he goes nuts.
Yep.
But then the second guy up there was Eddie Griffin.
oh,
Do you remember Eddie Griffin?
Yeah.
At the height of his time, that he would go up on stage on these nights where you'd go up and you practice your material,
Yeah.
and he was notorious for bumping everybody else because he goes, "I'm going to just keep going." And then the club owner says, "Oh, okay." So he kept going for like an hour, and people were heckling him and
my
booing
dream.
him. He was like, he'd sit and he had his drink, and he's like, I don't, I'm just going to keep working on my stuff, and all of so it's an interesting dynamic of how to deal with all of that. But that's where those were 3-hour, 4-hour shows in LA. And people would just, they're like, well, I got 4 hours to keep going. And they didn't turn that red light on,
Yeah.
But getting back to your guys' stuff, it's always 1 hour. I mean, that's what you stick to it, right?
we try to
Yeah,
keep it
depending
tight
on the
like
venue,
that.
But right, yeah, we like to keep a tight show. People want to get in and leave at a certain time, and they want to get home.
Go out to do other things, have dinner maybe before or after.
Dinner
It
before
fits really nicely into the lifestyle. We're going to take a break in a second, but let's just tell them before we go to the break, how do they find tickets and everything? rivercomics.com, isn't that correct?
TheRiverComics.com, and you
And-
can find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram.
But you get
at
tickets like at Eventbrite and stuff?
Yeah, but the links are on our website.
Links are on the website.
TheRiverComics.com.
Let's take a break. We'll come back with these guys for one more segment. Stick with us. We're back here with the River Comics. So we're making it clear these guys aren't the River Comics. Not like two guys that do comedy down by the river.
We are the River Comics, right?
We actually are just comedians who produce shows, and we came
Right.
up with a name. We were sitting at a bar one day.
Didn't you tell me one time, actually, originally when I talked to you guys about a year ago, I thought it was because you had like a pizza parlor by the river. Does this ring any bell when you first?
We did. We had.
Didn't you guys do
It
comedy?
was at a
Or was that a pizza parlor by the river? Because there is a big river, isn't there, in Lewiston, Auburn? Is that what kind of
Right.
the mill town and the river goes
Right,
through?
Dragon River.
And how is Lewiston, Auburn? Is it really getting? I drove through there. I mean, the downtown is unbelievable, and it's halfway there. But then there's pockets that are just empty.
Well, there's that, but I think
Yeah.
that's the same anywhere in Maine you go.
Yeah,
but
not Portland quite
not
now.
necessarily, but no, I had never really, because growing up in Portland, I never really thought about being in Lewiston.
Right.
And now that I have been for these last few years, and kind of established somewhat of a life there, I like it there, and I think there's a lot to do, and things are coming up and popping up left and right.
What year did you move to Lewiston again?
I don't actually live there.
Oh, you don't. You're
but
outside of there,
I
in that area.
I live in Bath,
Bath, okay.
technically.
Yeah.
But I spent a lot of time.
Spent a lot of time in Lewiston, right?
And I do like it there. I mean, especially since we get to make people laugh.
And Bath is really nice too.
Bath is nice. Yeah, Bath is nice. I do like it there. I don't want to.
Well, and you not to go too in depth with, but you work in Portland, so
I
you
do,
commute
yeah.
a lot of the way,
I'm all over the
and you
place.
work some remotely. So you're mostly in Lewiston, or
Yeah, I work in Lewiston mostly, but I have an office in Portland as well.
in Portland as well. Okay, so both of you guys come up to Portland a lot.
We're multicultural as far as the state of Maine goes.
Is the Empire was going to do a comedy club. I don't know if, and then COVID happened, and then
Yeah, unfortunately.
I believe it.
It's coming back, right,
I believe it is. I can't say for certain. We're not part of that.
That's a different thing.
But again, there's a lot of people booking comedy, and excellent for them.
Yeah.
I hope everyone has success, because if they have success, we have success. And
Yeah.
Right.
so on and so forth. And just the people walking by outside right now don't know where to go find comedy.
That's
So
true.
We're trying to bring them to the light as far as.
And it's because there isn't an established comedy club, right? That then it's like you could Google and say
Right.
Yuck Yucks and so on and so forth, and
right.
Tallahatchie or
Yeah.
in Chicago. I actually lived in Chicago twice in the mid 2000s, and then just recently, and we were living on Mag Mile, and exactly where we were living, a dude got shot as a drive-by.
Jeez.
So Chicago was getting wild. I mean,
not
do you have family there? Well, do you still have family in Chicago?
I
You
do.
Well, you hear about Lori Lightfoot. She didn't make the cut. She was one term.
Yeah,
the mayor.
one-term mayor, and which is odd, unusual
That's what they say,
to
right?
be elected.
Well, I think it was COVID happened, and it everywhere just kind of got out of control for a couple of years. I mean, you guys feel like you've gotten your kind of mental muscles back since then, and in all the different ways of life? Or are you still reeling from it?
I don't know. That's a
Hard
good
to say,
question.
right, yeah.
Hard to say, because it's hard to remember, what was before COVID and what's now come after COVID. I think it was just today at work, someone said something about 2021 being recently, but no, wait, it's 2 years ago now, and it was like everyone in the room kind of said, "Oh yeah, that's right."
It is wild,
It
right?
has been some time, hasn't it?
Since 2019, and it's like the
Yeah.
world stood still at that point. And so upcoming, you guys had a few things you want to promote, because I know we're almost at 10:30, and I know you guys got to drive back to Bath and Lewiston, right?
Yeah. I mean, I would say first and foremost, our shows, at Craft Brew Underground, we're soon to be hopefully Great Falls Comedy Club.
Great Falls Comedy Club. I like to say that.
Second and fourth Fridays, every Saturday.
Yeah.
Rivercomics.com for now with the tickets and whatnot. Wednesday night open mic if anyone wants to come out and try it.
That would be cool.
That'd be great.
That's at the Craft Brew Underground
That's
too.
there, yeah.
Okay.
All there. It's like Leonard said, it's our flagship location. We also do a show monthly at Obscura Cafe and Drinkery across the river in Lewiston. We do some shows at the Colisee Club, the old hockey rink in Lewiston.
Okay.
Upstairs, they made a nice club up there. We do some shows there. Mary Jane's in Farmington.
And then we have
Where am I missing? I mean,
the yearly show at
oh
Lost
yeah,
Valley.
Lost Valley. We do a
Lost
yearly comedy
Valley.
competition. We've had two years in a row now. We've had 300 people in that room.
One of these ones,
been really good.
remind me, we'll cover it here and we'll put it on. I mean,
Oh,
if you
yeah, no,
want,
it's
yeah, make
great.
it into a TV show.
That would be great.
Even if we film it live, you only want to do that obviously if you're sold out. But if you're sold, because you don't want to have poaching from
Yeah.
your actual tickets. But it's a cool thing to shoot live. I was going to ask you guys a question. Oh well, here's a question. So I mean, what is it like to be also a comedian, but also kind of the booker? So you have people always trying to get into your ear, and they're saying, "Hey, man, I need more time." How do you juggle
Just
it?
waiting outside just before
Yeah.
someone was texting
Texting you, yeah,
just to stay on top of my messages.
yeah, finagling you,
Yeah, kind of weasel. And it's fine. I think it's nice. We've met a lot of nice people, and
Right,
we
right.
love talking
Yes.
to them. We love helping them get spots.
But aren't comics notorious for being just relentless?
they can be?
Right. You know what I mean? It's like, because that's what they think is, that you got to put the time in, a squeaky wheel gets the grease. And how do you guys handle the booking duties? Half and half, kind of?
Leonard does most of it because
most of it,
he
yeah.
has the computer with the spreadsheet on it.
Right.
Yep.
I understand computers.
MIT he understands computers. Right? And you're the ex-hockey player,
I am so.
Right,
but
right.
I'm more the face-to-face guy.
face-to-face guy. You do
He's
the
the one who hip checks people.
Yeah.
hip checks people while you do the interviews.
Yes.
And well, also if you're comics, look these guys up, and even out of town comics.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
sure.
you could play at some of these different shows, open mic folks. Rivercomics.com. I know we got less than a minute. I think you guys have plugged everything. So right now I'm
I'm
filling
pretty good.
the last like 30 seconds before we go to the last part of it. I wish you guys a safe drive home.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Inside Baseball, I'm producing a sitcom. I'm trying to get these guys attached to it.
Uh-oh.
So we'll see. It's up to them. You never know if the quality is good enough. But otherwise, thank you very much for tuning in. This was live. We're almost out of time. So have a good night. Take care.